Today is Friday, January 12th, 2024, and this begins the phase 2 portion of the wings. And right now I am just finishing up the bottom skins. So the wings have been flipped over and the bottom skins have been installed. The only real challenges with the bottom skins are really with the, there's 5 different rivets that go into the bottom skin. So, you know, understanding where all those are and really making sure that I use color coding for the different rivets. The rivets range from 3.2, I believe it's 3.2 to 4.8. A lot of them are 4 millimeters. These are the 4.8s. So that, you know, that also affects the dimpling. So I did do, you know, of course, obviously did the dimpling on these skins, which, no, it wasn't very difficult at all. Using the big tables and having that dimpler set up properly and a little bit of a, you know, little stool there, I can slide those skins through, and dimpling was really not a big challenge. So the installation of the skins is not hard. So it's very simple, but I went ahead and decided that while the wings are flipped over, I would go ahead and fill the rivets. And before I show you that, let me show you what I'm using. This is super fill right here, and it's a 2-part, I don't know if this is an epoxy, but it's a 2-part filler, and it's 2 to 1. The blue is 2 portions for every 1 portion of the smaller can there, and I just use a scale. So if I put in, let's say, 20 grams of the blue, I'm going to put in 10 grams of the cream colored there, and then dilute it with isopropyl alcohol, and then I can use a syringe, just fill the syringe up and dilute it to the point where I can actually load the syringe. And so the first batch I did was a little bit thin, so I didn't use quite as much of the alcohol the second time. And then so what I'm doing is I'm using these are 10 millimeter disposable syringes, and this worked out really well. And so on this right wing, you can see where I just went around along here, and it's just basically just filling it in just a little bit at a time. It's not as hard as you would think. I actually enjoyed it and waited overnight, and then I sanded. So this wing is yet to be sanded. I will sand that before I flip this over. This left wing here has been sanded, and so you can kind of see the results of these rivets that have been filled, and I think it looks really nice. It came out nicer looking than I would have expected, I guess. And then of course, when I paint, I will try to paint these wings flat so that paint can somewhat pool inside of those rivet heads. It won't pool a great deal, but it will collect to a certain extent, and that'll look nice. Those dimpled rivets will look nice on that paint job. So and I still need to do, I went ahead and dimpled these inspection plates, inspection covers, and I'll go ahead and epoxy those rivets as well. You can kind of see here, that's what the rivet looks like before the epoxy is applied to it. So it kind of gives you an idea how that works. And while I'm at it, I just decided, well, let's go ahead and start filling the rivets on the control surfaces. So we got the horizontal stabilizer, and I've gone ahead and filled those rivets, and I'll sand these down, flip it over, and same thing with the rudder and the vertical stabilizer. I've also gone ahead, I still need to get some screws for this, but I did complete my wiring, and I tested the connections and everything for my beacon that's going to go on top of the rudder. So that is phase 2, but it's this is the bottom skins. I'll flip these over and show you what the top skins look like when those are completed. So the wings have been flipped over, and they're actually right side up now. So these are the top of the wings. And before we start skinning the top of the wing, there's a few plumbing items that need to be taken care of, as far as Pitot static, AOA, and some electrics for the wigwag, landing lights, as well as the nav strobe lights. So I've already installed the AOA and Pitot on the left wing. And the kit assumes that we're going to be going Garmin for all of our equipment. And so I'm at the point now where I'm getting ready to install the Pitot tube I got the pitot tube out here. And like I said, the kit assumes that there's going to be Garmin equipment installed. I don't know if you can see this or not, but this area right here is where the pitot tube will go. And there's a set of brackets that go on that that's probably how the Garmin hardware works. I'm actually not using Garmin. I'm going Dynon. Well, I'm going Advanced Flight System for my EFIS, and everything that Advanced uses is supported by Dynon. So all the peripherals that go into the EFIS use the Dynon equipment. So this is a Dynon pitot tube, and this is the pitot mast, and this is a little template used to mark out the holes for mounting. So it's not quite as simple as that. There's a little bit of a challenge because here, this hole again was designed for a Garmin pitot tube, and or excuse me, Garmin mast for the pitot tube. And this is the mast from Dynon, and this is actually designed for an RV. Dynon makes these so that they fit RVs. So I'm not using an RV and I'm not using Garmin, so we've got to make some modifications. So I had to enlarge this hole in order to get this to drop in. And now that it's in, it's nice that they did it this way so that I could actually rivet into the spar and really beef up this connection. But the problem is there is now a gap between this bottom part of the plate here. So my solution for that was I went ahead and took a piece of 05 aluminum, and that's going to be a spacer that I'm going to use for the mast here. So it drops on like that. Go back over here to the opening, drop this down here, and now we've got a very nice connection. This plate takes up that space between the wing skin and the spar, and so this will be a really great and solid connection. The only issue I have is that at the bottom of the mast, there is going to be a little bit of exposed from where I had to open that hole, but I can probably use some filler and take care of that situation. So that's where we are on the pitot. Okay, so installed the pitot tube, and let me show you one more thing I did to the pitot tube here. I didn't care for how these aluminum tubes were just kind of loose in here and kind of moving around, and I can see where in flight these might cause some issues, just bouncing around and so forth. And really to secure that, this plumbing, to secure that into this mast, I took some nylon rope, used it like packing material, and pushed it down into the mast around these pitot and AOA tubes, and then I just doused it and soaked the nylon rope with some epoxy resin. And now that this is all set up, we've got a very solid connection here. So I'm pretty happy that that's in a good, secure situation. I did run my power for the controller for the heat on the pitot heat. I just haven't made the connection. I'll make a connection there, probably with a Deutsch connector. So the next thing I have to do here is the wiring, which is for the nav lights and for the position lights, strobe lights. I'm sorry, landing lights, position lights, strobe lights, that sort of thing. So the wiring goes into both of these wings. So let me explain a situation that I encountered that created quite a bit of a concern for me, that I really had to make a pretty, I wouldn't say substantial modification, but something that's created some confusion. And the confusion comes from, again, using this paper instruction manual and depending on that as the resource is not the right thing to do. I have to always make sure that I can carry this thing around with me and move it around while I'm working on different components, but I need to really make sure I cross-reference it with the digital drawings that are uploaded into the Dropbox folder, which are updated much more frequently than what the paper instructions are. And that is, when assembling, let me just start with this here. This is the right wing, and when assembling these, putting this stringer in here for the bottom skin, I see that this stringer only goes to this rib here and then stops, and then the wiring just branches off towards the landing lights and then on out towards the tip for the position lights. However, when I lay down the skin, when I was doing the covering, when I was skinning, this is the right wing, and when assembling these, putting this stringer in here for the bottom skin, I see that this stringer only goes to this rib here and then stops, and then the wiring just branches off towards the landing lights and then on out towards the tip for the position lights. However, when I lay down the skin, when I was doing the covering, when I was skinning the bottom of the wings, there were dimples that went all the way out. So I went over here into the computer, the digital plans, and same wing assembly 3, but this stringer is here and it's over in the parts list. And so, okay, now that makes sense. So I found that stringer in this part list. I installed it. Here it is, installed on the right wing. It begins right here and goes all the way to the tip. So that took care of that situation. However, as I was proceeding on and I get to the left wing assembly, I looked at these plans and I see there is no stringer for here. And when I went and looked at the skin, there's also no dimples. So I said, well, okay, that makes sense. I didn't bother to cross-check it with the digital drawing, which shows the stringer there, but it does not show the stringer here. I made the mistake. I went ahead and skinned it. I did not include that stringer, which would have meant I would have had to drill those myself. But I didn't even realize it until I started doing the wiring. And as I'm looking at the wiring here, I said, well, I better go back and confirm with my digital drawings. And there I see it. Yes, there is the wires that are going out in 2 different directions, but there's also a stringer here. Well, I didn't do that for the left wing. So what did I have? So now what am I up against? I've got a wing here that's been fully assembled. This is the left wing. The bottom skins have been riveted in place, and I don't know what to do about now installing that stringer because I can't get in there with a dimple tool and dimple that. What am I going to do? How am I going to get that stringer in place? So what I decided on was I went ahead and just bonded the stringer in place using fiberglass. So my solution, I believe, has been adequately solved. I put down 1 layer of fiberglass that I bonded to the bottom skin. I scuffed the skin. I put down 1 layer of fiberglass, let that set up, and then I brought the stringer in. I had to actually drill a hole in the back of my jig to slide this piece in, and then I began fiberglassing up into this channel, and then on the other side I laid fiberglass over here, came up the side, and then over the top. So now I've got this thing's in here solid. It's probably in here better than the riveted ones. So that was the challenge there. So that took care of that. I'm going to go into the details on the wiring here. Okay, now that we got that left wing stringer issue resolved, the wiring has been completed, and I'm just going to go through each wing. This is the right wing, and I found it so much easier to pull the wires from the tip towards the root as opposed to the other direction. On this end here, this channel faces the rear spar, and the drawing or the manual says these 4 wires that go to the landing lights over here, it looks like they're just laying them across the top of this channel, and I didn't really care for that, so I actually added a grommet inside that channel, and I don't see that in the drawings anywhere. So that grommet was that I installed that myself. And then then they go to different grommets. This one goes to the nav light strobes and then on down. So that's what's happening here on this end. It's pretty straightforward on this right wing. All these are zip ties, which is nice. These holes are all pre-punched, and you just add those zip ties to pull everything in. So when I got down to here, there's a couple things here I want to talk about. The camera will focus. We can see where the wire comes out of that channel, does a little snake turn, and then it goes underneath this rib, and then through a grommet on rib number 3, and then back up to rib number 1. So let me go around to this side and see if I can make this, explain this a little easier. Yeah, here we go. So when it makes this turn out of this channel, I didn't care for how that wire could potentially chafe against that metal, so I did heat shrink that. And then I also did a standoff right here. I don't like the wires. Some of them have the wires just laying flat on the bottom of the skins, and I don't care for that, so I've added that standoff to help lift that wire up so it is suspended. And then I added another heat shrink on there because it kind of does touch the back or the bottom side of that rib, and then it comes out here, the first rib. And then so all this excess is here ready to go into the fuselage. All right, so same principle on left wing, except we've got Pitot and AOA lines. I just put standoffs in here. Well, as you can see, I just took some some plastic tubing, some zip ties, and I put standoffs there to really just separate everything, kind of keep it organized a little better. I don't know if that's necessary. Okay, so over here, finished wiring up the Pitot heat control or console, or whatever they call this thing, module, I guess. I put a plug in. This is called a Deutsch plug, and I've been using these on the other build project, and I really like these because they're waterproof, they're dirt proof, these are pin connectors, like the D sub pins, and you have to have a special pin crimping tool to pinch those to crimp those pins. So there's pins and barrels. You get the pin slides into the barrel, and those go into the sockets. And so I wanted this on here just in case you needed to get in here and disconnect it. I didn't want to make that like a butt connector or something like that. As far as, I probably will come back, I riveted this in, but what I probably really need to do is come back and put a riv nut on the back of those so that I can just reach in and just riv nut this whole thing to that rib instead of rivet it to the rib, so I can take it off if I need to. Already talked about this, the epoxy in there for the tubes. And then we just go on down this channel, and then now we are at the ribs that have been bonded into the bottom skins, and you can just see what's going on with this. Same thing, I've got a grommet. There's a grommet right there coming out, so it protects that wire. And then, over here, so there's a white wire, and then there's a yellow wire that's butt connected together. The reason for that is there are 4 of these 16 gauge wires that come, well, let me take it back. There's a spool of wire that comes with the kit, and the instructions say to measure off 5 meters times 4 for each wing. So you got 4 wires at 5 meters each into each wing. I thought I was being conservative, and I pulled a little bit more off on each one just to be safe, because I thought I'd have a little extra, just to play with, and I thought the factory would probably send me a little extra. No, they didn't. So anyway, these are called Scotch locks, and I was in the Signal Corps in the Army, and this is what we used to connect wiring, and this stuff was all outdoor sort of stuff, and it's got inside of it, it's got a dielectric sort of a protector, so these things don't corrode, and then you just pinch them together, and they make great butt connections, and so that's why I use that. What else? That's really it. We're coming to the end of the tip of the left wing, and so that's why that yellow wire goes out. So it's just, it really drives me nuts because I like perfection and consistency, and I wanted 4 white wires. I had this yellow 16 gauge wire left over from my last build, and so it's the same gauge and the same mil spec wire as the white wire, so it's not, this isn't AutoZone wire. This is from Aircraft Spruce, and so it's the real deal. It's just yellow. I hate it. But it gets closed in the wing and nobody sees it, so there you go. Okay, now we're gonna start skinning. This is a long video. Okay, so I'm about ready to rivet the top skins in place. I've got all the clecos installed. Everything's lining up perfectly. The front edge here has been dimpled, and nothing else gets dimpled on the top skins. I did have a couple guys come by yesterday that are also builders, and they took a look at my project and they made a couple suggestions, and I really am appreciative of that. I think that's what this community is all about, is people helping each other. And so one of the things that they mentioned was, if you look down here, this is the flat torque tube, and there's a grommet here that you can see that's encased. And one of the issues was that when the torque tube was turning, the grommet was also turning in place. And so we thought that might not be an ideal situation. So that got remedied real quickly. I happen to have some roll pins handy, and these are 3 30-second roll pins right there. I did it on all 4 of the bushings, and that just stops that grommet or that bushing from rotating in the hole. This is what a roll pin looks like. And if you're curious about where to get these, that's the number from, I guess I got them from Amazon. The second issue was the concern with the bonding on this stringer out here to the aluminum, and that possibly over time it may delaminate, and once you seal the wing up, it's going to be a real challenge to get to it. So why not just go ahead and shoot some rivets in there now that this is set in place exactly where it needs to be. So I did that. I just went ahead and shot rivets in here from the underside, and so this is now secured top and bottom with rivets. And so even if the fiberglass doesn't hold, you can see those rivets. Those are button heads. They're not flush rivets, so no big deal. Just what it is. So I took care of those 2 items, and now we're ready to button up the wings and shoot some rivets. The top skins have now been installed, and it's a little time consuming, but boy, it sure looks nice. There's no wrinkles or anything. This is just so perfectly flat and straight. Rivet lines look really nice. Install the leading edge on the tip with the bay for the landing light, and then what's next will be this area here, which is the fuel tank. And so this is a wet wing airplane, so that will be a series of ribs and wing or leading edge skins over here that will eventually become the fuel tanks. And starting on that project next, and that's where we will end this video. The only thing I did different here on both of these wings is on this trailing edge here. These are all mil spec 470, 4, number 4, and -3 with a length of a -3. And the purpose for that is that the pull rivets on this trailing edge tend to have a larger shop end, and sometimes, especially with the flaps, they can interfere, and these are just a little bit more flushed, or closer, I guess you could say, to the skin, so that there's no interference with mostly the flaps, not so much the ailerons, but I wanted the line to be consistent. So both wings have those mil-spec solid dome rivets on the trailing edge, and everything else is the pull rivet. And so let's go on. This will end this video, and we're going to go, the next video will be building the fuel tanks.